Hello and welcome. My name is Ross and I'm an immigration lawyer based in Sydney, and welcome to this week's episode 5 of Crystalcast. We've got quite a bit to discuss today. I've got a special guest who's going to be featured on our episode a little bit later on, and there is a news bulletin that I want to discuss, specifically focusing around the state nomination criteria for New South Wales as well as the state of South Australia, and there's also a couple of updates from Fair Work and VetAssess. Now, if you like our content and you like what you're hearing each week, make sure that you like and subscribe to our podcast to get the latest updates. And if there's anything that you want to be featured on this podcast, ensure that you get in touch with us or just leave your comments down below. Thank you very much. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast. Now, moving on to immigration news in 5 minutes. This week, there's been a number of announcements made by skills assessing bodies and also state nomination criteria. So the first one that I want to cover is the New South Wales nomination process. Now, New South Wales has announced 2 particular pathways if you are applying for a subclass 491 visa. If you are an applicant that wants to live, work and study in specified rural or regional areas for 5 years, you can apply for a New South Wales nomination for a skilled migration visa. Now, the way that New South Wales will work this year, there will be 2 particular pathways. The first pathway will be to apply directly to the Regional Development Area or the RDA. And the second pathway would be to apply directly to Investment New South Wales. If you choose pathway number 1, there are 2 options. Stream A, if you have been working in regional New South Wales for the past year and you have a job in a specific occupation, you can apply under this stream. And Stream B, if your skills are needed in regional New South Wales, you can apply under Stream B. Now, irrespective of whether you apply under pathway 1 or 2, there is common nomination criteria. Now, to qualify for New South Wales nomination, you need to meet eligibility requirements set out by the Home Affairs, including having a skills assessment in an eligible occupation, and you also need to meet specific eligibility criteria for the relevant stream. Now, if we look at Stream A under Pathway 1, you must live and work in a designated rural area for at least a year. Your job during the last year should match the nominated occupation. You should have been working with the same regional employer in the past 12 months, and you need to be paid at least $53,900. Your nominated occupation must be eligible for skilled work regional visa subclass 491. Now, if you are applying under Stream B, Pathway 1, you must have a skills assessment in the occupation listed in Stream B list, and you must be living in regional New South Wales or be offshore for at least 3 months. Now, if we look closely at pathway number 2, under this pathway, the occupation should be listed in pathway number 2 skills list and eligible for this visa. You need to be living in New South Wales or be offshore for at least 3 months, and you must have submitted your expression of interest via Skills Select seeking nomination in New South Wales only. So just a note on that as well, if you are located in a different state and you choose New South Wales as your preferred state, it is fairly unlikely that New South Wales will issue you with a nomination. If you go back to our first episode, I discussed the allocations for this particular migration year. States have received considerably less allocations than they had initially anticipated, so therefore the competition in relation to the invitations is expected to be quite tough. Now, invitations for pathway number 2, New South Wales invitations will be held throughout the year, but these dates are not yet fixed. They are not announced beforehand, so you can't predict when you'll be invited. Meeting the minimum criteria does not guarantee the invitation. It is competitive, so it is important that you look at other migration options, which we often discuss on this program, and that includes employer-sponsored migration, potentially family migration, and other options that may be available to you. Remember, Australia has a number of different visa subclasses, so therefore you do not need to limit yourself just to general skilled migration in New South Wales. Now, moving on to South Australia. To manage the substantial interest from potential applicants residing and working in South Australia, the state has adopted a registration of interest or ROI system. This means that individuals interested in state nomination must first submit that registration of interest and wait for an invitation from South Australia before they can proceed with their nomination application. It is not possible for a potential applicant to directly apply for state nomination. Within this invitation-based process, South Australia will give preference to retaining international graduates and temporary holders who have ties with the state of South Australia. Highly skilled foreign workers with expertise in fields in demand in South Australia, such as trades and constructions, defence, health and education, will be prioritised when it comes to receiving South Australian state nomination. In addition, South Australia is actively seeking highly skilled foreign workers who can significantly contribute to state's rapidly growing industries and national priority projects. Now, this includes individuals with experience in defence industry or highly specialised skills in digital as well as critical technologies. Now, going back to New South Wales, there was an announcement made a couple of days ago in regards to the particular sectors that New South Wales will be focusing on. In response to evolving skill shortages across each state, New South Wales will be implementing a new strategy that transitions away from the practice of publishing lists of eligible ANZCO unit groups. Instead, New South Wales will be embracing a sector-oriented approach, and if you recall, this approach is fairly similar to what Victoria had a couple of years ago. So what's changing? In the past, the state relied on a skilled list consisting of specific ANZCO unit groups, so the first 4 digits of the ANZCO. However, as of now, the emphasis has shifted towards prioritising sectors. Now, there will be 5 sectors that will be prioritised, and these include healthcare, education, information and communication, technology or ICT sector, infrastructure, and agriculture. Now, in regards to the invitation rounds, they still will be held throughout the financial year. There's not going to be predefined dates per se. However, New South Wales is hoping to have the first invitation round in the upcoming week. In terms of supporting regional development, it does remain a central priority for New South Wales. The Regional Skill Migration Program, or Subclass 491, is designed to assist regional businesses in attracting qualified talent. Details regarding reopening of the program will be provided once all the applications from previous financial year have been processed. Now, in terms of moving on to something a little bit different, and that is a new legislation that was released by the Fair Work. Starting from first full pay period commencing on or after 16th of September 2023, employees are eligible for overtime compensation if they worked beyond 38 hours per week or an average of 38 hours per week. An employee's regular working hours can be calculated based on a 13-week period. Additionally, employers may request or require employees to work overtime provided it is deemed reasonable. Factors such as employee's salary and position should be considered when determining reasonable of overtime hours. Now, employers are also obliged to provide overtime pay to employees for any additional work performed through callbacks or remote work using electronic devices such as laptops and phones, and also the penalty rates are going to be more enforced. Now, this particularly relates to the Professional Employees Award published by the Fair Work Ombudsman, and the purpose of this particular award is to ensure that the employees do receive reasonable overtime pay period, and also in addition to that employees who are employed in the professional sector are either remunerated for the time that they spent at work at a professional or at a reasonable level, or they are paid overtime. Now, we also know that a lot of us, we do take our mobile devices, we take our laptop devices home, and work, unfortunately, sometimes doesn't stop just in the office. So in order to compensate or to strike some sort of balance, Fair Work Australia is pushing for professional jobs to recognize that there needs to be a 5-day week, and where that is not possible because there is a business need or potentially the industry that the business operates in, then alternative arrangements need to be looked at. And last but not least, an update from VetAssess. VetAssess announced that they will pause acceptance of new applications under pathway number 1, specifically plumber general, from September 30th. Quote from VetAssess: "We currently assess this occupation against Certificate 3 in plumbing, which has been superseded and is not equivalent to the new Certificate 3 plumbing qualification that is due to come into effect on 31st of January 2024. We will complete all pending plumbing applications by 31st of January 2024 and are awaiting for instructions from Trades Recognition Australia in regards to the new requirements for the new qualification for plumber general, and SCO 33411. And that's all the news for this week's podcast. Now, a common question that gets asked when it comes to appealing a refusal or potentially challenging a cancellation of the visa is whether it's worth going down the path of appeal. Now, what I would like to discuss is, what does the actual appeal involve? Say, for example, if your visa application gets refused or your visa gets cancelled, what can you do? Now, appeal or a review process can be stressful, it can be expensive, and it's also very time consuming. So therefore, the most important element here is to understand the reasons why your application was refused. For example, if the application was refused on a discretionary factor, such as a visitor visa application or a partner visa application, yes, there may be an avenue to appeal, provided that you're able to substantiate further claims. The most important element here is to understand the reasons for the initial refusal. Now, one of the terms that I don't like to be using in the industry is that notion of buying time. Lodging an application with the Administrative Appeals Tribunal or the Federal Circuit Court with the hope that something better might come along. There are several issues with that. First and foremost, if you are a migration agent or a legal practitioner, you are bound by the Code of Conduct or solicitor's rules, so therefore lodging vexatious applications in the long run is just not going to be good for your career. And if you are a visa applicant, generally vexatious applications or applications that don't have a chance in succeeding at the AAT or the FCC will result in unfavorable outcome, which may result in you having to depart the country and then also being banned from re-entering the country. So what should you be looking for? Well, first and foremost, understand the reasons why the application was refused. Seek professional advice. Now, it goes without saying, if you're dealing with something that is complex, such as a visa refusal or a cancellation, it's important to seek professional advice. Now, I'm not referring to engaging someone to do the appeal work for you, but just getting that preliminary advice. Is it possible to appeal? What are the grounds for appealing? What more information can you provide? What are the alternative circumstances? Now, one of the alternative options that you might have is relodging the application, and that's something that we don't discuss enough. But if it's a process whereby a refusal might have happened because a particular document wasn't uploaded on time, or maybe it was something a bit more superficial than that, then perhaps an alternative option would be just to relodge the application. Now, that might save you money in the long run. Think about it, if you're relodging a student visa application, the cost of that would be no more than $2,000, whereas an appeal, to lodge the appeal without taking into consideration the professional fees in itself would be thousands and thousands of dollars. And mind you, also the processing time itself, that could be substantial. On average, a case at the Administrative Appeals Tribunal takes anywhere between 1 year to several years to be looked at. And when I say looked at, that is someone picking up your file and telling you whether you will be able to go to a hearing, whether you should provide further information. So it is a lengthy process. Therefore, it is unfortunate when we do get a refusal. It's disappointing. It can be stressful as well and time consuming, but we need to look at the bigger picture. So if you are going to be appealing a case, make sure you understand what it is you are trying to appeal and what are the long-term objectives here. And sometimes relodging an application could be something that is worthwhile considering, as opposed to simply appealing it to buy time and hoping that something better might come along. Let's do it. Well, Alejandro, welcome. It's good to see you. We finally get to meet face to face or virtually, whatever you want to call it. Maybe if I can get you to tell me a little bit about yourself, what do you do and how do you help people?
Well, Ross, first of all, thank you very much for this invitation, because I do appreciate to contribute to your podcast. And I would say with this episode, we will be able to spread a very good content and knowledge about stress and anxiety, which is the aim of the podcast. So about me, I do specialize in helping professionals and entrepreneurs develop a conscious mindset to achieve personal, professional, and business goals. I founded Alejandro Ortiz Consulting, which is my consulting practice, back in 2020 to help clients identify those main goals that they want to achieve with a conscious mindset in the background. So that's what I do, and I am happy to be, of course, here to support also different companies, organizations to improve team building, communication, negotiation, and also goal setting in companies as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Alejandro. Alejandro, I wanted to ask you now, in our profession, being immigration agents or migration lawyers, very often we do face with, I suppose, unexpected situations would be one way of putting it. We do have a lot of stresses, our clients, deadlines, and just being able to manage time effectively. And I suppose also prioritizing the priority. Now, I wanted to discuss with you a particular case that has happened with myself last week, where there was a situation that has occurred whereby things didn't go to plan. It was a particular project. The project didn't plan out the way that I would have wanted it to. Now, I'm fairly used to deadlines, and I've been in this industry for 15 years. But, in that particular situation, I still found it quite stressful, and I felt like there was maybe a little bit too much stress going on. And with modern technology, these sort of things do happen. So I wanted to understand more from you. How do you identify stress? What is stress? What are we feeling at that moment?
Okay, Ross, well, thank you very much for sharing that experience, because in the end, we all pass through moments that trigger stress in our lives. So stress is a physiological and psychological response to demands that exceed an individual's ability to cope, right? So these are external factors that happened and that triggered that stress. It's a reaction to what happened on the outside. And that involves bodies, that what we call body's fight or flight reaction, okay? And it's triggered by perceived threats or challenges, leading to various physical and emotional symptoms, right? So it's all about understanding the way our body reacts to external factors. And if our reaction is not good, it's because the way we responded to that external condition has a learning for us, right? So stress is all about the way we react at a physiological and psychological level when an external factor comes up.
Thank you, Alejandro. And I know that a lot of people, well, myself included, I use stress and anxiety in the same sentence sometimes. But what is the definition, or what is the difference between being stressed and being anxious?
Okay, good. I like that question, Ross, because in the end, sometimes we get those two concepts confused and they are quite different. So stress, as I said before, is a general response to external pressures, right? To external factors that happens, right? While anxiety is a specific emotional state that is characterized by excessive worry and fear, often without a clear cause, right? So here the key that is that we don't have clarity about the cause that is triggering that anxiety. So when we face uncertainty, right, and we don't know the reason why, that triggers anxiety. Whereas the stress is caused by something that is clear to us at that moment, right? So sometimes stress can lead to anxiety when it persists or intensifies, right? So when it comes to stress, we will be able to identify the cause because is known, right? It's perceived, right? So we can, let's say, identify what happened and alleviate stress. Whereas anxiety takes more time because sometimes the individual is not able to identify the real cause, is uncertain. That's why people sometimes live their lives with anxiety because there's an unknown cause that is causing that anxiety.
See, that's very interesting, Alejandro, and something that I've learned new today. I always, would use those words interchangeably, but it would seem that anxiety appears to be something that may not be identifiable to a particular event, whereas stress, it's directly caused by an external influence. And that's really good to know as well, because we do get the two confused, and it would seem like there would be two different coping mechanisms perhaps for those. So that leads me to the next question. How do you cope with stress when it happens?
Okay, so we cope with stress in different ways, and this is also a very nice way to, let's say, explain this question. So coping mechanisms for difficult situations that cause stress include, for example, deep breathing or seeking social support at that very moment, or improving time management, or have problem-solving skills. And these are what I call short-term mechanisms, right? Because you can use them at that moment when the situation arose and being able to overcome it. However, if we want to develop a medium long-term mechanisms to cope with those difficult situations, practicing meditation and mindfulness is a very good way to overcome it, right? Which is good. However, if we want to really address those situations properly, this is what I call long-term mechanisms. And this is, for example, the ability to identify the learnings from what happened. Why this is happening to me? What is the learning from the situation, right? What is life putting that situation in front of me and it's causing that stress? What do I need to learn? And when we identify the learning and we, of course, take action, life is so beautiful. So it's able to, let's say, release that situation from future opportunities, right? Because we took the learning from that experience. And the other thing that is long-term mechanisms is the ability to reframe the negative thought, right? So if we are able to change the perception of the situation, okay, perfect, this is happening. What can I do? What is the positive outcome out of this, right? So that those two mechanisms, so the ability to reframe the negative thought and the ability to identify the learnings is what I call the long-term mechanisms to cope with difficult situations.
Yeah, Alejandro, and I would have to agree with you there as well. And what you've mentioned there, that's really important. And that brings me to the next question. How much of our internal influence and also the external factors play in identifying and managing stress and anxiety?
Yes, Rose. So our personality and character significantly influence how we handle situations, right? Because we are all different. So there's a model that was developed by Edward Hermans that is, the model about thinking preferences. He divides our brain into 4 different quadrants based on our preferences, the way we choose, the way we think about situations, and the way we remember what happened, right? So when we understand that we are different and based on this model that I mentioned, of course, character and personality play a very important role in helping us cope with those situations that present on the outside. And traits like resilience, optimism, adaptability to enhance these sort of situations, our ability to manage stress, these are part of the traits that can be found in people when coping with those sort of situations that happened on the outside. So it's all about understanding the way we are, right? And sometimes we need a coach or a psychologist to be able to identify these in order to understand why my reaction towards that situation.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. And, we've got a number of new professionals that enter into migration. What sort of advice would you give them in terms of, coping with potential stresses that may arise? What can we do on our day-to-day life to manage stress?
Yes, Rose. So when facing unexpected stressors, like the one you mentioned, prioritize self-care is very important. Also, maintaining a support network, because in the end, we're able to support each other, and that's a very important factor to have, for example, within organizations. Also, practicing self-reduction techniques, right? Stress reduction techniques, sorry, because in the end, when we are able to identify ways to reduce stress, this is also a very important factor. Also, set realistic expectations so that we can achieve our goals per day, per week, without that stress, because we set realistic expectations. Also, if the situation arises at that level, seek professional help if needed. And also building resilience through exercise and maintaining a healthy lifestyle is also very good to enhance the ability to cope with life challenges. And what I would say to finish this answer, Ross, it's, as I mentioned before, our ability to reframe the negative thought. That is very important, because in the end, when we take the learning, the positive learning out of the situation, I would say that will be the long-term way to cope with next stress situations, right? So I would say that will be the way to answer this question, especially with the ability to learn and to reframe the negative thought.
I like that. Reframe those negative thoughts and make it into a learning curve as opposed to just sort of dwelling on it. Now, I know that you've got 3 workshops coming up with CMT. Can you just tell me a little bit about what those workshops will involve?
Yes, Ross. So I'm very excited because we're going to be running 3 events for amazing people to be able to help them with, techniques and mechanisms to cope with stress and anxiety and time management, right? So we have 3 events coming up. The first one is time management in a flash. And it's all about learn time-saving hacks and efficient time management methods tailored for fast-paced teams like the one we face at the moment, boosting productivity without sacrificing work-life balance. So this is the first event. The second event is conflict resolution, right? And it's all about equipping teams with conflict resolution skills to address disputes swiftly and constructively, fostering better network and reducing workplace tension. And finally, we have another event that is called Resilience Roadmap, right? And this is about equipping teams with resilience building tools and mindset shift to bounce from setbacks and remain productive in the face of adversity. So we have the 3 events. I'm sure they are going to be very beneficial to the audience. So I do hope that most of the audience attend these events, because I'm sure they will be very important when working in fast-paced environments.
Awesome. Alejandro, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you at those events. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Rosman, for the invitation, and thank you for making me part of this amazing community of professionals in the area, because in the end, it's all about here helping each other with our knowledge.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're done. Awesome. And now I want to move to my favorite part of the Crystalcast episode, and that is discussing anything but immigration. Now, my team here at Crystal Migration Legal Services and I participated in a very awesome challenge presented by Be Challenged. If you go to bechallenged.com.au, what they do is they provide activities and also set up corporate events for individuals and also companies as well that want to build their networking skills, that want to build upon their team building skills, and also work together as a team. Now, what I wanted to do is just to share how the day went. It was on a Wednesday. We were greeted by our team captain, and he walked us through the challenge. Now, the challenge was to pick a particular set of activities or pick a particular set of tasks that were placed around the city which would score us points. Now, we were divided into two separate groups randomly, and the point of it was to do as many challenges as possible. The challenges are quite interesting. Some of the challenges involved talking to complete strangers, asking them to make a donation or maybe take a photograph with you. So it sort of in a way reminds me of, going back to those basics and building communication skills with people that you don't know. So that was quite fun. Other challenges involved more of critical thinking, so potentially solving a particular puzzle piece and also working as a team. So therefore you had one person potentially filming a scenario, and then you had two people who were acting upon the scenario. But the whole idea was, it wasn't so much about how fast you can get the race done, but how well you can work together as a team. And you really had to rely on one another. This is not something that you would be able to do on your own. And, if you're moving fast, but you've got one team member that's struggling, well, that's not going to work for you. The whole idea is that you work together as a cohesive unit. And in a way, it does tie with what we do when it comes to immigration. When it comes to immigration, we do need to work as a cohesive unit. If you work with, say, an employer to do a TSS application and an employee, now the employer might be moving quite fast, but if the employee is not moving fast enough, then you're not working as a cohesive unit. So what did I learn on that day? Well, I've learned that I, from time to time, had to rely on other people, and that's a good thing. I've also learned that everyone's part, no matter how big or small, is important. I've learned to get outside my comfort zone. There were some activities that I didn't want to do, like coming up to strangers and asking them to take photographs with them or doing a particular skit. I didn't want to do that, but I've learned to get outside my comfort zone and participate, because I knew that if I wasn't going to do that, then my team wouldn't be motivated to do that. And I also didn't want to let my team down. And at the end, we were able to complete as many challenges as we could in 2 hours. It felt a lot longer, but it was great. And we really did work together as a team. So if you are looking for a corporate activity, and this is not a sponsored ad, I do recommend you getting in touch with a company just like Be Challenged. They put together awesome events. So whether you are an active person and you want to do a bit of physical activity, or whether you want them to set up an activity that doesn't require much physical work, it's completely up to you. But I definitely do recommend that. We felt very refreshed afterwards, and it was just a good way to break up the week. And that is all the time that we have for this week's podcast. First and foremost, thank you very much for tuning in, for supporting us. If you like the content, please ensure that you like and subscribe this video to get the latest updates. And if you do want to be featured on our next week's episode, email myself, ross@crystalmigration.net, or inquiries@crystalmigration.net. Thank you very much, and enjoy your weekend.